Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm Kat, and I'm the membership coordinator for MIG. So MIG has partnered with the Cannabis Certification Council to put together a series of deep dives on best management practices for sustainability in cannabis. This is our second event, and today we'll be talking about water. We're really excited to have you all here today and be able to learn and grow together. Helping our industry become more sustainable is something that we need to do collectively, and we hope that you guys are able to take something actionable away from today's event. I want to thank Ben and the Cannabis Certification Council and the speakers for all their hard work on this and for sharing their expertise. We've brought together some true experts in the field, and we're so fortunate to be able to have them available today to provide guidance and answer questions for us. So please use this as an opportunity to ask hard questions, connect with people, and engage with us. I am also going to shamelessly plug MIG, as I am the membership coordinator and we're accepting new members. So if you're interested, I'd encourage you to join me as a guest at our next all member meeting on May 18th. I'll put my email in the chat so that you guys can connect with me. But with that, I'll give it to the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Kat. My name is Ben Gelt. I'm the chairperson of the Cannabis Certification Council, and I also just have to reciprocate that thanks to Kat and the Marijuana Industry Group and Truman Bradley there for their support putting together these events and trying to drive the adoption of sustainable practices in the Colorado cannabis industry. So really big kudos and thank you to Kat and to Truman and to the membership of MIG. And I'll also shamelessly plug for them, if you are a Colorado operator and you want to know what's going on in this state, they are the only group worth really signing up to be a member for. So they're the people to work with in the state of Colorado. So we are very, very pleased to be working with them, and even more pleased to present our wonderful panel today. Today we have Gretchen Schimelpfenig, which I always try and get right, and it looks like I probably got it a little bit wrong, but pretty close. All right, thumbs up. Gretchen is from the Resource Innovation Institute, a wonderful nonprofit based in Portland, Oregon, that does great work tracking the carbon footprint of the cannabis industry and now all indoor agriculture. We're also joined by Kyle Lisabeth from Silver Bullet Water Treatment. They are water experts through and through and can tell you how to maximize operations and efficiency. And then finally, we're also joined by Jake Mitchell from Resource Innovations, a wonderful sustainability consulting firm. So with that, I'm going to get out of the way and turn it over to Gretchen and our panel of experts to dive in to water in Colorado. So Gretchen, take it away.
All right, thanks, Ben. We're glad to be invited to this event and to speak with Colorado actors to help discuss water as well as resource benchmarking, as well as the concept of preparing for certification for excellence. So I'm here to talk to you today representing Resource Innovation Institute. I'm the Technical and Operations Director, and I facilitate our Technical Advisory Council, write our best practices guidance, deliver curriculum like I'm doing today, and manage PowerScore, our resource benchmarking platform. Please feel free to email me at gretchen@resourceinnovation.org. So I'm going to talk about a few things today before the other panelists dive deeper into some of these topics. I'm going to chat about the benefits of sustainability and how we can quantify them for water, some methods of achieving efficiency, including continuous benchmarking, as well as some thoughts about preparing for certification. So a little bit about RII. We're, as Ben mentioned, a nonprofit focused on establishing resource efficiency metrics and improving resource efficiency and productivity in the cannabis cultivation and controlled environment agriculture markets. We measure resource efficiency using benchmarking philosophies to create specialized key performance indicators for cannabis and other crops, create benchmarks for energy, water, waste, and more, and also baseline to understand what's a traditional method and then what's a high performance method. We inform stakeholders like governments, utilities, and industry supply chain members like Silver Bullet and Resource Innovations to understand best practices, gather policy recommendations, help programs get better, and establish standards for CEA. And lastly, with producers, we help verify the technologies and techniques that work in a brand agnostic and peer-reviewed way. We've been around for 5 years and have expertise in climate policy, efficiency programs, and sustainability. and have been applying that knowledge to cannabis and are expanding that to non-cannabis crops and post-cultivation activities with a USDA grant that will be serving the controlled environment ag market at large. We have over 70 members in our network representing some of these different sectors of the industry, and the representations below are just a couple of those from each section. And we bring them together to have a common ground to talk about best practices and come to a consensus on how to help agriculture be a beneficial industry for the world rather than an impact. The Technical Advisory Council is the heart of RII, and members and non-members gather together in different working groups to guide standards development, shape our tools and resources, make recommendations for better resources and best practices in other external stakeholder groups, and advocate for informed policies, good incentive programs, and reasonable regulations. So we have several active working groups and a few new working groups in 2021, including the emissions working group. And currently our controls working group is finalizing the controls best practices guide, which includes best practices for lighting, HVAC, and water management systems. I'm going to talk a little bit about PowerScore today, which has historically been just for cannabis and has specialized key performance indicators, like I mentioned, for energy, water, waste, as well as system level indicators for things like HVAC and lighting systems. We have launched PowerScore Pro, which allows folks to compare their portfolio to the ranked data set of PowerScores and filter by location, canopy size, and different types of cultivator approaches. Utilities are using PowerScore, and other actors like perhaps multi-site operators or engineers serving cultivators to understand pre and post efficiency and productivity when they're doing efficiency projects or maybe changing the way they grow. And as they do models and assess portfolios year over year or do new designs, they can use PowerScore to check their information and add more insights as they make business decisions. We've been educating the market since 2017 with efficient yields and have been launching a continuing education platform in 2021 to provide educational resources for utilities, design and construction professionals, so people can get more after a live event like this. Check out our media in Greenhouse Grower, Cannabis Business Times, Cannabis Science and Tech, and now as we expand our reach, American Vegetable Grower. We publish a lot. We write best practices guides, like I've said a few times. We also have member-only publications like the primers on utility programs and cannabis policy, as well as our quarterly reports on insights from the PowerScore and insights from governments, utilities, and stakeholder activities called The Landscape. So let's talk a bit about water benchmarks and how RII has been benchmarking resource usage with partners like New Frontier Data for energy in 2018 and water in 2021. The members of our water working group, which includes Silver Bullet Water Treatment, helped us create this with New Frontier Data, and it is free to access. You can download it from our website, which will direct you to New Frontier's website, where you can get that and take a look at some of the concepts that we're going to talk about in this next section. The graphic on the right shows some ways that water is used, processed, and managed in a cannabis cultivation facility. And in PowerScore, we have two metrics, water efficiency and water productivity, that are used to quantify the sustainability of a water process. In the Cannabis Water Report, we also gathered water demand in gallons per year and gallons per month. And that is something that's also in PowerScore, but is not as much of a KPI of numerators and denominators. So on the right, you can see that you can water plants with irrigated water and deal with the runoff. You can drain to waste, or you can manage that discharge and treat it and perhaps reuse it so that it can then become a more efficient process. In some regions, not in Colorado, but perhaps in Illinois, HVAC condensate is required to be reclaimed and reused. And so growers who already need to, for different reasons, treat their source water may actually have a benefit in already having some of the need to have that equipment on site and can choose to do some more treatment and reuse, especially from used water. So in Colorado, and depending on your region, depending on your water source, these choices may be more or less important for you. But I'd love to jam on this in the Q&A. If you have any questions about the interactive effects of some of these processes and how those can affect your water efficiency and productivity, I'd love to hear from you. So for example, as you irrigate, you impact your HVAC loads, which causes your HVAC equipment to manage that new moisture. The HVAC system type can also impact water use. So perhaps if you're a greenhouse using evaporative cooling system, you're going to be using more water. Or if you're an indoor facility using a cooling tower, you might be having a higher water bill than someone using a completely non-hydronic system at all. All in all, though, one of the things I just wanted as a key takeaway is that sustainable water practices are possible if you think about the different systems you have. Think about what is important for you to manage. Is it that I want to get the most grams for every gallon, or is it that I want to minimize gallons? And then you can take that as a business practice to then start to continuously benchmark. We'll talk about that in the last section of my presentation, but let's talk a bit more about these water benchmarks and maybe what ones make sense for you. The Cannabis Water Report was described by Marijuana Business Daily with the graphic on the left showcasing the 3 key KPIs that I described earlier for both outdoor, greenhouse, and indoor cultivation spaces. On the right, you can see a summary of the indoor, outdoor, and greenhouse facilities from a few different data sets. The top is the Power Score data set that includes national facilities from about a dozen different states. The California data set is just greenhouse and indoor operations from Northern California, and the Michigan data set is a small data set of indoor facilities in Lansing, Michigan. One thing to note is that the indoor facilities have more harvests per year, and so their total gallons per year is higher. And so Power Score and our analysis is going to start looking at more of gallons per harvest as we go forward with more data. Taking a look at the KPIs, comparing them against each other, and also considering the growth of the US cannabis cultivation market over time for both legal and illicit markets, indoor, greenhouse, and outdoor, you can see that we have a need to start to standardize these KPIs and start to socialize them so people start to report them and start to aim for the same bullseye. So comparatively to other industries, we can see that the cannabis market is not a demon, and though it may be sensationalized, we can do a great job to tell a story of sustainability rather than one of energy or environmental impacts. So as the cannabis market becomes more competitive, as you can see on the bottom left, a competitive, resilient cannabis market demands water efficiency, even if it's not the worst industry compared to other agricultural products or other industrial processes. So how can you achieve efficiency when managing KPIs? First, decides which ones matter to you. Some folks want to think about, like I mentioned, gallons of water per grams of biomass. Or maybe they want to just totally reduce the gallons of water. Most growers, though, are seeking to enhance productivity while also reducing operational expenses. So depending on how you're charged for water or your water source, those KPIs may be more or less important to you. But to just summarize, when you're using Power Score or making some of these key performance indicator calculations on your own, think about, is it efficiency or productivity that is more important to you? And if it's both, what's the balance between them? Jake's going to talk a bit about incentives for energy and water efficiency, and I just wanted to share that maximizing incentives can be enhanced with Power Score. Competitive operations think about how their KPIs are performing. They continuously monitor and track them. They use best practices guidance to improve those KPIs, and they track and report those changes over time. And if you do those things, either in Power Score or outside of it, you can better participate in programs for energy efficiency, as well as programs like strategic energy management that Jake will talk about. And those, the reasons why those can be helped by doing continuous benchmarking is that this is a kind of a production process, and efficiency programs are not necessarily tailored to having to manage how much production per unit of energy. And so if you start to take those pieces of information in, you can report them to utilities, and they then can give you better incentives. So what's in it for you? Beyond getting better incentives, reducing your OPEX, and perhaps improving your sustainability position, you can also get recognized for excellence by preparing for the certification programs that exist today and the ones that are going to come out in the future. Our USDA grant scope of work will establish a roadmap for a certification program for CEA facilities, and there are already other certification programs for things like good manufacturing practices or organic production. So think about the KPIs that matter for you. Think about how an integrated design approach can continue into post-occupancy and follow through on commissioning issues that might have been identified. Establish data storage so that you can trend and automate systems, like the person in the picture here, so that they can truly understand what's happening to plants and then also know what's impacting KPIs. In regulatory regions, you might need to figure out how to comply, and KPIs can be an asset for you as you begin to have regulations come down the pike. And regarding certification programs, KPIs may be the ways that you can actually get certified. So use the data that you've established to gather to prove that high performance. I'll finish here by saying that we at RII really hope to work with you to celebrate excellence. You can celebrate your sustainable achievements with case studies after benchmarking, either with us or without us. And we really think that environmental sustainability and governance reporting is going to be more and more important for the cannabis industry. And we look to help those who seek to have thought leadership opportunities in case studies, curriculum, conference presentations, webinars like this. And we look forward to helping you with maximizing incentives and getting help from utilities and governments. So if you have any questions, I'm going to check them out in the chat, but I'm happy to hand it over to Jake at this time.
So my name is Jake Mitchell. I work with Resource Innovations, and today I'm going to be talking about optimizing water to optimize your entire system. So Max, if you want to go to the next slide, thank you. So this is me. I don't know why I put a picture in there because you can see me right here, but I'm an environmental consultant for Cannabis. Prior to this, I did climate action planning and sustainability strategic planning for private sectors and for municipalities, and then went on to start my own company, Cannabis, doing sustainability consulting and resource development for the cannabis industry. Now I work with Resource Innovations. We're an environmental consulting firm that primarily works with utilities and in energy and water. And so my role specifically is executing energy efficiency and environmental programs for utilities, as well as doing general sustainability consulting for controlled environmental ag. So working with cannabis and a bunch of just indoor ag in general. In the cannabis world, I'm the Denver Cannabis Sustainability Work Group Best Management Practices Guide co-chair. This was the Water Chapter chair of the NCIA environmental white paper that was released this year, a bunch of advisory boards, as well as releasing a data benchmarking tool with the state of Colorado and the Colorado Energy Office later this year. Next slide. So what am I going to be talking about? A bunch of stuff. Impacts are a reflection of practice. We're going to talk about some of the just general impacts of water in the cannabis industry. How water and energy kind of work together, the best practices that you can use to manage your energy usage and your water usage, cash for gold projects, so how to receive incentives and rebates for some of the projects that you're working on, and then finally we'll be talking about systems and how to look at them systematically. Just going to go to the next slide, Max. Thank you. So as you can see here, this is a overview of the watershed in Colorado and our river and lake system. It looks super complicated because it is super complicated. Kind of that simple. Most impacts in the watershed are related to water usage, poor water usage, poor irrigation techniques, and harmful discharge. In agriculture in general, that's a huge issue, but in cannabis, outdoors and indoors, we also see some of those issues kind of feeding in. Water impacts are a geographic issue and a unique problem, unique to each grow and where you're located, right? So thinking about it in terms of, I'm going to say systems a lot, so you're going to get tired of it, but thinking of it in terms of a system, all our watersheds are connected, and downstream users are connected to upstream users. You're connected in ways you'd never imagine because of the water system and because of the natural systems that we have here on Earth. So it's important to remember your good irrigation and water practices are not just for you, they're for your community at large. And they're specific to you, right? So if you're in an area that's zoned differently, you're gonna have different abilities to what you could do with your water, where your water's coming from. And so it's important to consider it on an iterative basis and on a personal and unique basis. It does have impacts on carbon and energy. Wastewater treatment, it uses energy, and It therefore emits carbon. So, that discharge to the wastewater treatment facilities, that treatment process does have a carbon footprint, which most people tend to overlook, as well as potentially increasing the energy in your own system. So just to quickly go through some of the impacts that we outlined in the white paper, NCI white paper earlier this year. The impacts for indoor grows, like in cities, is management of municipal systems, the water flow, making sure everyone downstream has enough water, making sure all that water is kind of facilitated around in a way that benefits the entire community, impacts to the whole watershed and to the system thereof, overconsumption, which causes lack of ability downstream. You have obviously unique indoor impacts and unique outdoor impacts that are going to vary widely depending on your methodology, as well as wastewater discharge, which is usually in the form of fertilizers, pesticides, and heavy metals, which make it downstream, cause things like the dead zone and in the Gulf and other issues. So tying together water and energy, right? It's important to look at your system systematically and look at the system as a whole, and understand what's going on between your water and your energy nexus and all the other aspects that tie into that, like your plant production and your nutrient use, and all the little pieces that kind of put together to turn your system into a cyclical environment. Irrigation systems directly use energy through pumps and things like that. You have water treatment, which also uses energy, but reduces the energy load on the municipal water treatment facilities. So there's kind of a playoff there. You have your HVAC usage, your heating and air conditioning is tied to your watering methodology and your schedules, as well as your dehumidification is obviously heavily tied into your water system. And then finally, you have the ability to create inefficient systems if you're not careful with that water and energy. And I'll show you an example of that here on this next slide. So in a non-integrated system, what happens? To give you an idea and a model here. So let's start from the beginning. Cultivation uses imprecise watering technology and lacks good control systems, right? So if you're hand watering and just scooping into a bucket and throwing that water on the plant, you don't have a good control system in place that's controlling your water and controlling your temperature and humidity. You're going to start to run into the first issue, which is evaporate off the medium and transpiration caused by high humidity, because your system isn't tied to your irrigation. It doesn't know that you're irrigating the room, and so it doesn't account for that in the system. Dehumid and your heat turn on because your plants are transpiring like crazy, which cools down your room. And the humidity goes way up. So your dehumidification kicks on and your heat kicks on because it's trying to raise up the temperature of that room. And then your plants transpirate more because the heat went up and the humidity is lower. So they're going to put out even more water. And then your AC is going to turn on because the heating wasn't really necessary in the first place because your lights would have warmed up that room anyways. And your AC turns on and it cools down that room. And then the dehumidification and the heat turn on again, because you again have that high humidity and cooling effect from the transpiration. And then you're going to have to water more since your plants are transpirating so much, and you start the cycle again, right? And so you end up using more water and more energy when your systems aren't tuned together. And you end up having your AC and your heating battle each other, and you have your dehumidification kicking on all the time for long periods of time and pulling tons of water out of that system. Whereas if you did an ideal approach like we have here, and you use efficient and consistent irrigation methodology and an integrated control system that works everything together, your humidity and your temperature are monitored more closely because you're paying way more attention to what's going on in that room, and your control system is paying attention to what's going on in that room. The lack of excessive transpiration keeps a consistent temperature in the grow and a more consistent humidity. So your dehumid only needs to kick on for a short period and is used much less because you gave those plants exactly how much water they actually need for your system. Your heating and AC don't fight each other, right? There's a few different ways you can do that, by widening your dead bands, like when the heat kicks on and when the AC kicks on, but also just by creating that consistent environment with good watering techniques. and with good systems control. Plants are kept in a more consistent and happy state, and you did it. You got an ideal system that is working together and is growing together, and you end up saving water and energy when you look at these two things together. And that's kind of my main point here is, water obviously does have a big impact. Energy has a big impact. Waste has a big impact. All these areas of sustainability have a big impact, but they need to be looked at together in order to really make the system operate as efficiently as possible. And then we have, my favorite metrics here. If you told 18-year-old Jake that he's going to be working in pot, he would have been so excited. If you told him he was going to be giving a presentation on what are now his favorite metrics for water usage, I don't know if he would have been so excited, but these are my favorite metrics when it comes to looking at your water usage, often overlooked metrics, and how they can kind of inform that whole tying the system part together. So vapor pressure deficit, for example, is the first one. This is overlooked in a lot of grow operations. And yeah, Ben, I am very excited about it now. I just wouldn't have been then. So vapor pressure deficit measures the pressure of the water vapor on the surrounding air, and the deficit between what is the vapor pressure in the air at the maximum holding capacity of the air versus what the actual vapor pressure on the air at that time is. And what that does is it lumps temperature and humidity into one control factor. And you can see over on the right here, this is a VPD chart that I put together for some of my energy efficiency assessments I do, and shows what VPD is expressed in kilopascals, usually, or another different pressure metric. And so this graph shows, your healthy transpiration times for veg and early flower, which is that green area. You have the high transpiration times for late flower, and then you have low transpiration for propagation early veg. So it kind of shows you exactly what the VPD of your system should be, which is your relative humidity and temperature rolled into one number during the different stages of the plant's life. So VPD is really awesome for fine-tuning your HVAC and your dehumidification, and also fine-tuning it into the stage of life that your plant is in, right? Next, we have transpiration rate. So this is how fast your plant is actually transpirating water through the stomas and its leaves. Most agricultural scientists use a device called a pitometer, which is just like a U-bend PVC pipe that you're putting a plant in and seeing how much water is coming off it. But you can do general calcs with a wider margin of error. That's basically like, hey, I put a gallon of water into my plant and the leaves start drooping after about 10 hours. So my plant uses about a gallon per every 10 hours. And that shows you kind of how much water is running through each of your plants in your system specifically. And it's going to be different based on the day, based on your humidity in the room, your temperature, the VPD, all sorts of stuff. And then one, and Gretchen touched on this, but water use per unit produced. So looking at, your total water usage in the facility versus the grams coming out of the facility, or however you want to line that up with production. Those are my favorite ones to use for this kind of, when I'm looking at these kind of systems. Max, you want to go to the next slide? Okay, so options for rebates and incentives. There are rebates and incentives available when looking at your water usage and how it ties in with energy. So variable frequency drives on irrigation pumps obviously is much more feasible outdoors, but you can also tie VFDs into like smaller indoor irrigation pumps or sub pumps. And these basically just turn on the irrigation pumps at a lower power range, which allows you to save energy, but still get your water out of the system. Your pump scheduling, you can get a rebate for if you take your pumps off peak, all the energy that goes into using those pumps. If you take them out of that 2 to 6 p.m. window, in a lot of utility areas, especially with Excel, you'll be able to get a rebate for that. Strategic energy management, which is a whole beast of a presentation in and of itself. But basically that is tying together your operation and production with your energy usage. And so we can get rebates for all sorts of operational incentives. And if we can prove that by using less water, your HVAC is running less, or your dehumidification is running less, or you're switching to a more efficient system, If we can prove that there's a production increase or an energy decrease, then we can get you a rebate for it. And then there's direct water rebates. So if you're in, like, I know Fort Collins water utility, for example, has direct rebates for using less water, period. You just get a check for the gallons reduced, and that is the same in a lot of utility spaces. So make sure you reach out to your water utility or your municipal provider and ask if they have direct rebates for reducing your water usage, because those are all over the place. Submetering and usage rates and discharge fees, you can also get waived if you're, like, if Kyle were to go in and build out a cyclical water system for you into your grow operation, and you're no longer discharging that to the wastewater treatment plant, you can get a rebate for that, because you are getting charged a discharge fee on your water bill in most municipal areas. So just kind of wrap up what we went over. Be systematic about your system. Understand that water, energy, and the rest of your systems are linked in very complex ways, and you got to collect and use your data using a tool like Gretchen, RII, Power Score, or the Blooming Benchmark that we have coming this year with the state of Colorado, to collect that data and make practical decisions. You want to get detailed, so use metrics that are often overlooked, like the ones that I went over, to determine what's actually happening in your facility, right? If we're making decisions that aren't based on data, we're not making good decisions. Act, something I love about the cannabis industry. Everyone in the cannabis industry is a doer, not a thinker, and that always excites me. But try changing something small first and see how it ripples out, and then start to fine tune your system. And don't start with a huge project and just overhaul everything unless you're working with an expert like Kyle. And then assess and monitor. Constantly monitor your system and assess for changes to fine tune the benefits for effective strategic water management. This is something I put when I explain any kind of sustainability endeavor. You always want to assess and monitor and see how it's working, and see how it's working for your system. And then finally, reflect on your impact. And this kind of leads into what Kyle's going to be talking about. But collect data, understand your system, and then see if you can do better. Be honest with yourself. Can you do better? How much water are you using? Do you need that much water? And then understand the options. What options are available to reducing water? Are you hand watering right now? Maybe look at a drip system. Understand the technologies out there that are available to growers. Calculate the benefit. Look at the return on investment. Don't just blindly go after it because you think it's a good idea. And then finally, make a change to your system. And that's my presentation. So I think Kyle's going to take us off next, and I'm excited to hear what he has to say.
Exactly right, Jake. Thank you so much for that great presentation and your ongoing work and enthusiasm, man. It's a huge part of why you're such a compelling figure in this space. So as you said, next up we have Kyle Lisabeth from Silver Bullet Water Treatment. Kyle, take it away, man.
Awesome. So Kyle Lisabeth, I represent Silver Bullet Water Treatment. We're based out of Golden, Colorado. I'll talk a little bit about our company and what we do specifically for the cannabis industry. And then my goal with my section of this presentation is to take you guys through some strategies, some hands-on strategies growers and cultivators can use to optimize their water management program. And it's a little hyper-focused, I guess, on existing grows. I know we have a lot of existing grows in Colorado, but these can be applied either to existing or new or future build-outs. I'm actually up here in the Northeast right now, working with a couple multi-state operators with new facilities. So interesting timing. We're going through new water management programs and new SOP programs for these new facilities. So we are practicing what we preach in this presentation right now. A little bit about Silver Bullet. We focus on a couple very select industry markets, commercial markets, and they mainly evolve around agriculture and energy use. And the key focus there is coming up with water management programs that improve operational efficiency. Okay, whether it's a water treatment system or a program to reclaim your water or use water more efficiently, that's the goal. Getting the water quality where we want it and improving operational performance. How we do that? We develop water management programs. We're going to talk about that in this presentation. We also do design engineering. That includes speccing treatment equipment out for optimizing water quality or reclaiming water quality, or even treating water for discharge. We also provide service and maintenance. So we commission and train our customers and partners on all of the solutions we provide. We want to ensure that it's working properly and it's sustained. So that's a big part of our business. Analytical services and consulting services. Again, that's at the heart of this conversation. So we're going to get into those and how you can use us or other companies out there to leverage those service capabilities to optimize your grow. And I'll just say sustainability and compliance are a huge part of what we try and bring to the industry. We invest a lot of time and resources as a company into understanding what it takes to be sustainable across all the markets we serve and what it takes to be compliant so that our growers and our customers are reaping those benefits. And so this next slide shows you kind of where we gain our experience. You know, we work a lot with Gretchen, Jake, Ben, and a lot of other industry affiliations, as well as state and local programs. So the regulatory agencies, especially in states like Massachusetts or new states coming along with really stringent requirements for what your water footprint is going to be to those local municipalities. Industry organizations, like I just mentioned, multi-state license holders. It's important. We gain a lot of experience out of large companies that own multiple licenses. They're trying to standardize processes between different states and different facilities. You know, you heard Jake mention not every facility is the same. All right, they differ between cultivation methods and geography and where they get their water. So there's knowledge that we gain from collaborating with those partners. Turnkey design firms. There's a lot of them out there. We're often spec'd in or integrated with a company that's doing a turnkey design, as well as ancillary equipment providers. We work a lot with fertigation companies and other water treatment companies and other things that are being ancillary equipment being integrated into these facilities. And my advice to you guys is make sure you partner with companies that are doing that. You know, as Jake mentioned, all these things have to talk and work together. Your water, your nutrients, your HVAC, your lighting, and it's going to make your process more efficient. Who else we got on here? International customers. So they brought up compliance. Well, we're anticipating, and we see this trending that the industry is going to, you know, a national standard and even an international standard for compliance, similar to pharma or other ag sectors. So understanding kind of where the industry is heading and how to best prepare for it is important. And then I'll say, you know, we're in energy and ag, big ag, a lot of poultry and swine production, and some of our, you know, our other businesses at Silver Bullet. Biosecurity is a big deal. You know, energy water nexus is a big deal in a lot of those segments. And we're trying to bring that knowledge and understanding into the cannabis space. Say, hey, you know, there's some ways to optimize your facility that other industries are doing right now. So why have a water management plan? Well, you know, we talked about it a lot in this already, you know, auditing, water use efficiency, tying your water and energy nexus, integrating system, rebates. Basically, the 4 points on the right of the screen: return on investment, compliance, operating costs, and risk management. They're going to pay dividends if you have an appropriate water management program. You know, there's a lot of owners and investors in these very large, very expensive facilities. They want to understand what their return on their capital investment is and how things are running. With a water management plan, you can show them, hey, this is our performance, this is how we're doing, and here's how efficient we're being. Compliance, each state's a little different, but making sure what goes into the plant is going to ensure, you're getting compliance and passing testing on the back end, and ensure your plants stay healthy. Operating costs, it's a huge one. You see all these crazy pictures on here. Well, if you're able to keep your water clean, you're able to reduce downtime and maintenance, and that directly impacts your operating cost. And I think the other thing that these pictures reflect is risk management. Risk management, half these pictures have pathogens or are blocking clean water to getting to your plants. And growing hydroponic plants, you might have a couple hours they can last without proper water supply to them. So how do we evaluate our water quality for plant production, operating cost, and compliance? Obviously, Gretchen used this great process flow diagram. I'm going to use it as well. It's a great way to kind of understand what we need to evaluate water quality. First, understand your compliance. Look at what the state regs are in your area. Look what you can do and you can't do. Then identify your process flow. Map this out. It's amazing how many facilities are going that don't have one of these, and just start from scratch. Know where your water is going in your facility and how you're using it. Identify external variables, biosecurity, incoming outside air, nutrients. There's a lot of external variables, even in these controlled environment ag facilities, that we want to kind of QC and make sure they're clean, or they're not bringing in something that'll negatively impact water. Validate your treatment process. You get a nice skid from Hydrologics or Silver Bullet or somewhere, validate it. Make sure it's working the way it's supposed to and giving the water quality that you want. And then validate your water infrastructure. You got great treatment, you got a great drip irrigation system. What about your tanks and your pumps and your pipes? Make sure there's no dead legs. Make sure there's no stagnant water. Do a walkthrough of your facility and understand where your water is going. Then you get to conduct a water quality survey. Map it out. Take some tests before and after treatment, at the end of the line. Figure out what your water quality is. Identify your exposure. Once you see all the water and where it's going and how it's being processed, identify if there's any areas of concern. So at the bottom, you have, assuming a 4-room grow, it's a very small commercial grow, I understand that, but just for an example, we would typically say that's going to take about 2 weeks plus lab testing cost to evaluate all the things I mentioned on here and come up with a water management program. Do you have the time to do that? Okay. If you dedicate 2 hours a day, how many weeks or months is that going to take you? So do you have the resources and the technical expertise on staff to do that? And if not, where can you find that information through one of the industry affiliates on this or elsewhere? So I'm going to go a little bit faster, but same thing. How do you, now that you have your facility process flow and you know how you're using your water, well, how do you evaluate or develop SOPs? How do you keep things running properly? So you know where your water is going. You got your facility process flow. Then you want to gather all your ancillary equipment guides, your manuals, your instructions. And you want to break those down and you want to understand thoroughly how you use that equipment, what the warranty is, who the point of technical contact is, what's the replacement schedule. All right, double check your compliance again. And now you can start to develop and customize operating procedures specific to your grow. And that's instructions, it's guidance documents, it's schedules. When should things be checked? How often? By who? Do you have the technical expertise? Do you have a lot of employee turnover? You want those instructions so that if you do have to have employee turnover, those procedures are there and you can onboard that person quicker. Transparency, rather. Determine time required and who's responsible. And I'm going to skip the last bullet. And so go back to our 4-room grow example. Again, that's going to take 2 to 3 weeks to develop those SOPs specific to your grow. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of technical work. Let's say you got those SOPs in place and then you say, all right, well, I'm going to estimate maintaining my water system in my grow is going to take 6 hours a week and 300 hours a year. That's checking everything outlined in your SOPs. Do you have the technical expertise in-house? Do you hire that person? Do you outsource it? A lot of the larger grows we're seeing, especially on the East Coast, they have a full-time dedicated facility maintenance guy. That's all he or she is responsible for. So the last big bulleted item I'm going to talk about is routine monitoring. You got your water plan, you got your SOPs, now you got your routine monitoring. This could be weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually. You could look at water, you can look at your substrate, you can look at your plants, okay? But you develop a routine monitoring program and then you track what your water quality is as it goes through your facility, what it starts with, what it is after treatment and storage, what it is at the end of the line going to your plants. And you develop a water map for that, and you turn that data into information. You evaluate it, you understand what you're looking at from a water quality standpoint, and know what you want your water quality to be and trend it. And that's going to do a number of things for you guys. It's going to make sure your plants are getting the right water quality, the water quality you're expecting, the right nutrient profile, the right DO, the right ORP, right pH, right EC. It's also going to identify if something is broken or needs maintenance along the way. If you're expecting a certain water quality at the end of the line and it's not that, you can trace it back now that you have your water management program and say, that piece of treatment equipment or that pump is not working properly. By validating that, you can ensure plant production is sustained and you can ensure compliance is sustained. And that goes full circle back to the ROI to your owners and your investors. So the last example I have down here, again, that 4-room grow. Let's assume 200 plants per flower room. Guys, don't beat me up on these numbers. These are for example purposes. 5 harvests a year, $1,000 per plant per harvest. If you took a quarterly water monitoring program for that 4-grow facility, you're looking at $2,000 to $4,000 annually. Again, testing quarterly. If you had a 60% crop loss in one of those rooms in one harvest, you'd be looking at, 5 figures in lost revenue. If you lost a single room in a single harvest by not passing compliance, say you had heavy metals that you tested hot for, it would be bumping up into that 5-figure range, 6-figure range. So my point is the water monitoring program could be, a 4-figure investment. And without having that, you could be looking at a 5 to 6-figure loss. That's the takeaway on that. I got to give a shout out to RII and New Frontier. Jake was also involved in this. This is a great resource, guys. This is the most comprehensive water report to date specific to cannabis. And it recently came out, and guess what? It's free. Go check it out. It's got tons of information. I can't say enough good things about it. And finally, my contact information. If you guys ever want to chat about water, myself and our team are game. Okay, that's all I got.
Kyle, that was awesome. We do have some questions and comments. I'll pull up one from the Q&A from Cody Hitchcock, our great friend at Smoky's Cannabis Company here in Northern Colorado. He asks, can you speak to why maximum transpiration does or does not equate to maximum growth and yield? Evaporation from media and runoff are obvious wastes, but can we address transpiration versus yield specifically? And Kyle, that I think was for you, but I'm sure we can also open it up to Gretchen and Jake if you guys would like to respond to it.
Yeah, I'm going to reread the question in this chat. I'm not sure if I fully understand it. Yeah.
The Q&A. And again, Well, I'll let you read it. I won't say it
I
again.
think it was something while Jake was talking about
Was it?
the systems
Was-
fighting against each other. Or
That
maybe
sounds like.
before that.
Well, excuse me then. I thought it was while Kyle was speaking, so my apologies. I'll restate the question, and again, it's in the Q&A
Yeah.
for you guys. You got it, Kyle?
No, go ahead and reread it.
Okay.
I got a couple chats going on.
Can you speak to why maximum transpiration does or does not equate to maximum growth and yield? And Jake, maybe this is your question then, so anybody feel free to stop me. Evaporation from media and runoff are obvious wastes, but can we address transpiration versus yield specifically?
I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm an expert on irrigation rates and dryback and how that correlates to biomass production. I can tell you, if you have the right physical and chemical water quality properties going to your plant and you have the right nutrient profile, that's going to give you the best opportunity for maximum water uptake. Now, does the plant want to take that water up? That dives into the BPD, technical information that Jake was talking about. Can that plant physically transpire that water, pull that water up and transpire it and absorb those nutrients? So it's two parts. Yeah, you can feed water and the perfect water quality to your plant all day long, but if it can't transpire and take that up in the right environmental setting, then it's a little bit counterproductive.
Yep. Yeah, because it's not going to be transpiring unless it's taking up water, right? And if you're transpiring at a really high rate, you need to balance your nutrients based on that transpiration rate. That's why I recommend using that metric for looking at your grows, because if your nutrient system is based on how much water and nutrients your plant is going to be taking up, if it's taking up more than you'd expect, then you might be over fertilizing it. And if it's taking less than you'd expect, then you might need to bump up how much nutrients you're putting into the system, because it's not just simply not taking up enough water through the plant. So that will affect your yield at the end of the day based on the nutrients that are being taken up by the plant based on its transpiration rate. There is another metric called transpiration ratio that I've used in the past, which looks at the total dry weight at the end of the system versus how much water was transpirated throughout the plant's life. And so that does create a ratio between your end yield and the transpiration rate of your plant. And then you can look at the transpiration rate in 3 different plants or 3 different settings, look at the gram yield at the end of the day, and get an idea of how that transpiration is affecting your yield.
Gretchen, would you like to add anything to that?
I'm not an HVAC designer, but I do think that it's important to remember that there is a limit to how much transpiration the plant can do. And so, like what Jake was saying, it's like, no, like I just would like to introduce kind of the plant empowerment philosophy. There are energy, water, and sugar balances in these plants, and having a static set point to constantly do X to the plant doesn't mean that you're going to maximize yield. So listening to the plant, and if it's maxed out and can't transpire anymore, trying to do more stuff to get it to transpire further to maximize yield is not going to do anything. It's an organism.
Thank you, guys. So I think with that, we have some stuff in the chat going, but we've resolved the questions in the Q&A, and we're just about at an hour. So I think we will take this time to wrap this up. I want to thank Kyle, Lisabeth, Gretchen, I'm just going to say Gretchen from the Resource Innovation Institute, Jake Mitchell, and of course, Kpis from the Marijuana Industry Group. Thank you all so much for your participation, for sharing your brains and your work. Thank you to the audience for attending and for your great questions. This will be on YouTube, so we will see you on the interwebs. Thank you all so much for participating and for supporting sustainability and trying to help improve the picture, not just here in Colorado, but all over the cannabis world. So thanks everybody, and enjoy the rest of your Thursday.